Rockets and Knicks were in Game 5 when O.J. started that fateful drive. His four-way hazard lights were blinking, and no one knew what the Jews was thinking.
I've been to Reno, Chicago, Fargo, Minnesota, Buffalo, Toronto, Winslow, Sarasota, Wichita, Tulsa, Ottawa, Oklahoma, Tampa, Panama, Mattawa, La Paloma, Bangor, Baltimore, Salvador, Amarillo, Tocopilla, Barranquilla, and Padilla. I'm a killer. I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere, man. Crossed the desert bare, man. I breathe the mountain air, man. I've traveled, I've had my share, man. I've been everywhere.
This is Oversight Live, your advocate for good governance. We're putting the site back in. Oversight. Here's the watcher on the wall, your host, Ben Carpenter.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Oversight Live this Wednesday evening. I do have my days correct this time. Thanks for joining us tonight. I am Ben Carpenter. I am the host, and you might wonder what Oversight Live is. Well, I created Oversight Live here not too long ago because I saw a need in our community. Our legislature in the state of Alaska is only accessible by boat, by ferry, or by air. There is no road to Juneau. So it is very hard for our legislature to receive oversight from the people. The people, cost prohibitive, both time and money, for them to get to Juneau and spend a couple days to a week down there of watching what's happening and just providing influence. So without a road, it is troublesome and it is difficult, but it is not impossible to provide oversight. We have technology. Most of the meetings that occur in Juneau can be live streamed or watched recording. And I created the show to bring the significant ones to you. So there's a lot there. And because I served in the legislature for a number of years, I have some expertise and some skills to understand what's going on. And so I am going to prioritize what I think is important for a given day or time period. And we're going to review what has happened so that you stay up to date. You don't have to filter what's happening down there through the press, the liberal media, because the information that is available in raw form. Okay. I'm going to show it to you. I can show you where to go find it. It just requires effort on your part. Well, I'm going to help reduce that effort just a little bit. So I'm a fiscal and social conservative. That's the lens at which I'm going to look through life and through politics and self-government. So you've got that bias, but I'm upfront with it. If you've got questions during this episode or while you're watching, I'm streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and X. And if you've got questions, just enter it into your chat window there. It'll come up to me, and I'll do my best to answer the questions. If you're watching the recording, drop me a line, drop me an email at producer@oversightlive.com. That's producer@oversightlive.com. And I will do my best to answer your email. Okay, we're going to attempt to have some fun today. I got a update from my previous meeting yesterday when we discussed, or maybe it was 2 days ago when we just discussed HJR 18, House Joint Resolution 18. This is a bill brought forward, a resolution brought forward by Representative Mia Costello and co-sponsored by Senator Rauscher. It's a resolution supporting the Alaska gasline project. Okay, the one that Glenfarne has been tapped to build, to bring to FID and build the pipeline. Well, we learned in committee that Senate Resources the Senate Resources Committee changed that bill and removed all of the reference to the specific project and made the bill into a generic, we support a generic pipeline project. The reading between the lines, that means that the leaders of the Resources Committee, Senator Giesel, Senator Wielechowski to be exact, don't necessarily want to see this particular pipeline project go forward. So that's in essence why they have done what they've done. It's a message only. The joint resolution is not a binding piece of legislation. It's not changing statute. It's not establishing anything in statute. It's just basically the opinion of the legislature that can then be sent to federal agencies, be sent to Congress, to the White House, to other states, just to communicate that this is the intent of the legislature. This is what the legislature supports. Okay, so it's really key in that the members of the Senate Resources Committee don't want to communicate that this project is something that needs to be supported, that there could be some other project out there that we would support. So that passed out of Senate Resources today without much fanfare. My understanding from speaking with some folks down in Juneau is that the governor still wants the resolution, even though it has been watered down. So I would assume that means there's no more fighting over this resolution. We're not gonna criticize. We're not gonna ask why the changes have been made. Let's just get it passed so that we've got this document that we can use to promote the project. Okay. So that takes us up to today where that occurred, passage of that bill, or not passage of the bill, but removing it out of committee, out of the Senate Resources Committee occurred in Senate Resources today. What I think I want to bring to you tonight is there's it's under 30 minutes long. Some of it we'll probably trim out because there's some questions by the press pool there in Juneau, but it's a Senate majority press availability. And this is some of the leaders of the Senate answering questions, giving their perspective, and then answering questions from the press. So you've got Senate President Gary Stevens is going to be chairing the meeting. To his left is going to be the majority leader, Senate Majority Leader Kathy Giesel. To his right, I guess if you're looking from our perspective, on his left and on his right is Senator Wielechowski. Further on the right is Senator Stedman, and then all the way on the other side is Senator Tobin. Senator Tobin is the Education Committee Chair. Senator Wielechowski is the Rules Chair, and Senator Stedman is one of the co-chairs of Finance. He is the Capital Budget co-chair, which just means that he's got responsibility for everything that's capital budget, and Senator Hoffman's got responsibility for everything that's operating budget, and then they work together to get the budget passed. Okay, let's get this show on the road here, because I'm gonna pause it and we're gonna talk through this. I haven't even started yet, Craig. He says the dishonesty of the Senate leadership is beyond frustrating. We haven't even got there yet. Don't steal my thunder. It's interesting, Craig, that you brought that up. That's exactly what was on my mind. So let's get this show on the road here.
It is the 79th day of the legislative session, and pleased to have with us today Senator Giesel, Senator Wielechowski, Senator Stedman, Senator Tobin, and myself, Stevens. We're entering now, of course, into the last third of this session, and things are beginning to come into pretty sharp focus. Alaskans are watching closely what we're up to. Major issues out there, certainly the state budget, the elections issue, the education reform, and the future of the gas line for Alaska. So very, very big questions, very big issues, and the Senate is taking them quite seriously. So one piece of legislation that's before us right now is the governor's gas line bill, and that's Senate Bill 280. Senator Giesel and her Resources Committee have been working and going through that thoroughly, review and hearing directly from the project developers and working through the details of what this could mean for our future here in Alaska. So Senator Giesel, can you walk us through what the committee has heard, where the bill stands, and what can we expect to come out of the Resource Committee?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. President. The Resource Committee has been working on the bill. Starting next week, next Monday, we're actually going to be meeting every day of the week for the next projected 3 weeks working on that bill. There's a lot of media saying and letters to the editor saying that we should be enthusiastically supporting the gas pipeline, and we are. We have House Joint Resolution 18 before the Senate Resources Committee.
She just sponsored a committee substitute to the resolution that she'll talk about here in a minute that stripped out reference to this project. And yet she has the gall to say this publicly to everyone that working hard and we support this project. If you support the project, why strip out any reference to the project in the resolution that is supposed to be speaking for the legislature's support of the project? This makes zero sense, Senator Giesel. It's almost like you don't expect people to be watching one meeting when you're having another meeting, because I can pull up the clip where you just removed all of the reference of this project from the resolution that's supposed to, its purpose is to speak support about the project, and you removed all reference of this project out of it. And now you have the courage to sit there and tell us that you support this project. You have a funny way of showing it, Senator.
Committee, and today we'll be hearing it again and moving it out of committee. It'll move then to the Senate floor through the Rules Committee. We have been scouring the bill. The mayors met with us and had concerns, and we are very much respecting those concerns about how the impacts will be paid for as they come through their district. There's a very interesting part of the bill.
Mayors want the ability to negotiate with Glenfarne, with the project. They do not want the state to take away their ability to negotiate at their jurisdiction. Okay. So when she says that she's working with the mayors and they're concerned, at a bare minimum, the mayors want to be able to negotiate on their own. And they see the bill as a threat that takes away any taxation authority from the borough. But that isn't to say that there's not an agreement, even if the bill gets implemented, that there's a path forward for the boroughs to negotiate with Glenfarne and with the project for coverage of costs that are going to be associated with this here. So this is kind of smoke and mirrors, right? We got to have some sort of an excuse for the skepticism.
And it's in section 6 on pages 5 and 6, and it talks about the volumetric tax and the abatement of taxes during construction, and the taxes that would be abated include any taxes on oil or gas production and pipeline property, also gross or net income tax, license, excise, any fees, charges, or other tax on or relating to the purchase, use, consumption, or ownership of property or services. So a question we have, which we're going to be exploring, of course, with the Department of Revenue when they come before us next week, is how broadly does this apply? is it only in the area where the pipeline is going, or does it apply statewide? It's very unclear in the bill because potentially this could apply to things like wages, employees purchasing items at the store, maybe a package of cigarettes. Are they going to be issued a card?
Can you imagine her and her staff, or maybe the Democrats sitting around brainstorming on how this could be misapplied? Can you imagine that? I can, because any excuse will do here. Do you realize that current statute, if you did nothing, current statute would have an abatement during construction for the project? They wouldn't be paying any tax during the project either. That's current law. So again, this is smoke and mirrors. Yes, the bill says that there's going to be an abatement. There's going to be a tax holiday, if you will, during construction, but that's keeping the status quo. That's what it currently is now. So she's making a big deal out of nothing because that's what it is now. So go ahead and answer your question, ask your questions and delay and take time. Answer your questions. And then I love the press. One of the reporters here has actually got a really good question. We'll get to that here in a minute. So
that says I'm an employee and therefore I don't have to pay an income tax or, a sales tax or any kind of fee for this package of cigarettes. These are some pretty serious questions. And it goes on to say that this abatement will continue during construction, operation, or maintenance of the pipeline. Well, maintenance and operation goes for a very long time. It does specify that when we hit 1 billion cubic feet, that then a 6-cent tax would go into place. But a 6-cent tax is incredibly minimal. Year one, it would be 6 cents per MCF. Year two, with a 1% increase, it would be 0.061206 cents. I mean, that's it doesn't even account for inflation. So while
the
we're being
decimals don't account for
encouraged
inflation
to move quickly on this, we are moving quickly with all due diligence, and we're asking a lot of questions, and we'll continue to do that. But I know that there were many House members who were not aware of all the taxes that would be set aside, and I think all of that needs to have due consideration. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Giesel, for approaching this very, very carefully as we have to. Let's turn to education then. Senator Tobin has been leading legislation that addresses the two very critical issues. One would be correspondence programs. The other would be inflation adjustment for the BSA, base student allocation. And that's had a lot of conversation back and forth about that across the state. And I know you've been listening to that very carefully, Senator.
Hey, we've got more money now, so let's talk about education funding.
So could you tell us, Senator Tobin, could you share with us what you've been hearing from Alaskans since you introduced the bill, and give us a sense of what changes you're considering in the committee substitute?
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I do just want to invite folks to Friday Task Force on Education Funding. We'll be focusing on local contribution, federal impact aid. I cannot pass up an opportunity to invite more folks into the conversations that we're having about the long-term reforms that are needed to stabilize our education services here in the state. Senate Bill 277 has had significant input from stakeholders and a lot of robust discussions happening with many of our constituents and with folks who have significant concerns about the way that the bill is currently drafted. As we shared in the initial bill introduction, the intent was to ensure that students who are participating in a public school option are able to have fair access to all before and after school programming while not impacting their education experience or eroding any of the purchasing ability that they have when it comes to being able to purchase supplemental curricula or any type of additional resource. However, we know that there is some reservation about the way that the bill is currently drafted. So we have been working with stakeholders, and I've been working with committee members to work on a committee substitute that hopefully will continue to meet the needs of our stakeholders, as well as address the concerns that I've heard from lawmakers and from education administrators. one of the things that has arisen as we've continued to evaluate Senate Bill 277 has been some of the decisions that we do not have any influence over happening in our geopolitical space. And one of the emerging needs is the increase in fuel costs. We had superintendents here in the building last week, several of them who shared that they are in the process of negotiating their fuel purchase for the upcoming school year. And with diesel costs continuing to climb, they're unsure of how they're going to be able to come up with the funds to ensure that their schools are heated next year. So we're looking at that and trying to figure out a pathway forward to ensure that we don't supplant dollars that should be for the classroom with paying for fuel. Finally, of course, one of the things that I think is really important is that we will continue to work with our finance committee members as we look to see what is the capacity and ability for us to address education increases this year to our base student allocation or potentially to our motor fuels or to heating fuel costs to address those issues. We recognize that there are many competing priorities in the state, and we want to ensure that while we're focusing on our operational costs in education, we're also addressing deferred maintenance.
Well, thank you, Senator Tobin. So Friday, we should know more about the committee substitute. Great. At this point, then, glad to open it up for any questions you may have. I remind you, though, please to state your name and affiliation for the record so we have that down.
Hello, Eric Stone with Alaska Public Media. This question is for anybody who would like to answer it. Brent crude prices are down $15 since yesterday on the news of the Iran ceasefire. I'm curious if that is playing any role in how you guys are thinking about the budget. Does this change anything in the way that you guys are approaching the budget?
Well, it just reminds us how volatile oil prices are and how dangerous it would be to base on a high price, and we don't know that that's going to continue to be. Senator Stedman's been working with that, and the Finance Committee. Can you enlighten us?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. We were cautioned by the Department of Revenue with the spring forecast that oil prices are very, very volatile, and they had some examples if they would have just backed up a handful of days that it substantially changed from the target price of 75 they're using at the time. And we heeded that morning. We're holding the target in the Senate at $73 a barrel for the budget. We definitely notice that the prices are above that today. You mentioned in the 90s, and I think that's pretty accurate, actually. So we have been having some preliminary discussions on some possible fuel triggers or need for fuel triggers to assist in particular regions or departments in the state in case prices do go into 100 and 120 or something like that. We just don't know, but there's no way we're going to budget for that. And next winter, when we do our supplementary budget, we'll take a look at the prices then and decide.
I just want to pause here and notice how easy that concept just rolls off Senator Stedman's tongue. Supplemental budget, because the process that this government is engaging in is passing one budget number one, and then we know that the next legislature, that's after the election, or like this is the second session of this legislature. Then the second session is going to deal with a second budget. So we don't even have to put everything in this budget. Technically, we can just trim it and get the majority of things in, and then we can address something else in the supplemental later, because we know we're going to do a supplemental. It's the opposite of discipline. It's knowing that we have this out for the conversations that we have right now. We don't have to solve all the problems because we can address them in a supplemental later. Okay. That is the crux, one of the problems, the crux of one of the problems that we have with this legislative budgeting process is you can't hold the government, you can't hold ourselves as legislators to some sort of discipline, because you've got this out. You'll just address issues in the supplemental later. So it's not, why call it a budget, right? It's just a a desire for how we're going to spend money, we're not going to hold ourselves to it because we just come to the supplemental and add money or add spending if we've got the money, right? So it is the opposite of self-discipline.
If there's other opportunities, I think the other body might be considering some waterfalls, and in the event of higher prices, we've used those in the past, and I expect in the Senate, and I would expect if we do fuel triggers, we'd have some waterfall triggers,
So fuel triggers and waterfall triggers, what the heck is he talking about? All right. So you've got concepts that can be written into the budget bills that say, if oil reaches a certain price, then this happens. This gets funded. This subsidy happens. And if oil prices get to a certain amount, this money goes in this direction, and then some of it goes to another direction. So you can think of it as kind of a cascade of what happens when prices reach a certain level. And if they reach higher than that, then the money goes someplace else. We talked about this the other night in House Finance, where in the operating budget, there was an amendment put forward by Representative Bynum that addressed excess revenue in the future budget, in the current fiscal year's budget. Sorry, not current fiscal year. The current budget that they're working on for the next fiscal year. That if money came back in, revenue came in that was above what they were projecting, that half of it would be spent on a energy rebate, and the other half would go to savings. Okay, so that's kind of like a trigger and a waterfall effect that Senator Sedman's referring to, because they've already put it in the operating budget.
Price, it would trigger, but let's not forget that when we say $73, we're using an average price, and that price would start the 1st of July and end a year from this June 30th. So we're not taking $120 or $100 or $90 to the bank.
Well, thank you, Senator Stedman, and thanks, Eric, for the question.
Hi, thank you. Corinne Smith, Alaska Beacon. My question's also about the budget, and I was wondering if there's any update from negotiations with Dunleavy's office around the supplemental budget, and then without the CBR draw, how are you negotiating that with the upcoming budget negotiations?
Thank you, Corinne. Senator Stedman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. I think it's done. That budget passed. The CBR vote failed, but oil prices are higher than forecasted. It appears that there's going to be ample revenue. If this is for FY26, for those watching at home, that ends the end of June, there should be ample funds for the governor to go forward.
Mark Sabatini, Juneau Independent, continuing with budget questions. The big thing happening over in the House today is they're taking up the operating budget. And I'm wondering, what are you seeing in there that you want to see either amended on the floor, or is going to be stuff you target as soon as it gets sent over to the Senate?
Who would like to take that? Any comments? Senator Stedman.
We let the House do their process. We don't know what that bill is going to look like till it gets the final vote. And we'll take it under advisement as they send it over. Take a look at it.
Need better questions there.
Yeah, Will Courtney, Alaska's news source. I'm going to pivot away from the budget for now. I'm sure we have more questions about it. But Senator Giesel, on the LNG pipeline, you've mentioned that for the next 3 weeks, is it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday? So that's going to be 15 days of discussion on, just a massive property tax bill. Where do you want to be in 3 weeks when discussion on that begins to hopefully wrap up?
Well, we want to be at a finished product with a majority of our questions answered and sufficient protection for Alaskans in this, in terms of the revenue that we're giving up, the expenditures that we're making into this project itself.
Protections from Alaskans, from the evil private corporation, because they're gonna try to take us to the bank and not give us what's due us, right? That's what she's saying. she's under the impression that in her hip pocket, she's got a viable project for a pipeline. And if we don't like what we've got from gasline developer Glenfarne and the current project that she's already demonstrated that she doesn't want to see happen, that there's some other project just waiting in the wings, and that'll be the one that'll protect Alaskans, and we'll get more money from that project than we will this project. Okay. The disdain for private enterprise that this woman is expressing is staggering. It is, it's amazing. It's amazing.
I mean, some people are saying we should be investing in the project. We actually have. We've spent over $1 billion already on a pipeline project. There have been various permutations. This is one.
This isn't just one. This is one that's super close to FID. It's one that has a path forward. You've never had a path forward before. You've never had a project that could be finalized and move forward. This is it. This is the only one that you've ever had.
So the other thing that I always remember is that a pipeline may not be the only way to monetize our gas. We've had proposals in the past from organizations that were going to actually export the gas directly off the North Slope.
See, we don't even need this pipeline. This project doesn't even need to go forward. We don't have to take less. We don't have to address the tax bill that the governor's put out. We don't have to go to a volumetric tax. We don't have to come off our 20 mils tax rate. We don't have to do any of that because we don't even need the pipeline. There's other ways to do this. We can go take the gas off the North Slope through ships, which is a completely different scale. Completely different scale. She obviously cannot come out and say, I don't believe this pipeline's in the best interest of Alaska, this project that we have before us. She obviously cannot come out and say that. But you can read between the lines in everything that she's saying. It's like it's oozing out of her that she wants to see this project die.
That could be another option. So the bottom line, however, is the idea of a volumetric tax, an alternative volumetric tax, as the governor's proposed, is probably a pretty good idea. So that's great. It's the question of how many of the other revenue streams we're giving up, and what does the tax look like when it's implemented? Is the tax abatements, are those applied statewide?
You're not giving it up because you don't have a project if you keep on those lines. You don't have a project with it. You've got a developer that's saying this is what's needed for the project. And if you don't like that, then find a different developer. You don't have one. You don't have another project. You're acting like there's an alternative. You don't have an alternative. You can stick to your guns and say, we need more money for the state. We need more tax revenue. We need more. You can stick to your guns, and then the project dies and you don't have another project. You get $0 then.
To what level? All of these kinds of questions we need to hone into. The other thing is, this is 280 that we're talking about. We also have 275, which is more of a structural policy bill versus only taxes. And so we'll be looking at that also. Thanks for the question.
We're going to go online to Iris Samuels with the ADN.
Thank you. I have a couple questions. The first is about the supplemental budget. It's now been almost 2 weeks since that was transmitted to the governor. I'm curious if you have a sense of why that wasn't signed yet, and also if you're hearing from transportation officials on whether some of those projects that were on the line will in fact go forward this summer. And then separately, I'm hoping you can talk about the plans for the omnibus tax bill and whether we can expect any action on that this week.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Iris. And Senator Stebbins, can you talk about the supplemental?
Again, on the supplemental, we took action in the Senate and the House. We approved that bill. It looks like there's ample revenue for the governor to move forward. So just move forward on it.
Folks, if you want to know why the governor hasn't signed something, don't ask the legislature.
The other piece of legislation, it's a working
Ask the governor.
And we're working on it.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, Jeff Landfield. I just wanted to ask about the dividend. I was in Anchorage this weekend and I spoke to an acquaintance and he was excited about the full dividend, and I had to explain to him why that's not the case. It's been 10 years. Public's really confused at mixed messaging for 10 years. Why don't you all just get rid of the formula and say whatever we can do, or stop confusing the public about these big numbers?
Well, Jeff, you've hit on a very important issue that the public has been confused in hearing there may be a full dividend. I think the Senate realizes that it's not going to happen right now. But when you tell somebody you're going to get $3,000, I mean, who doesn't want $3,000? But we know that it's just not in the cards. And once you've been here for a couple of years, you should understand that that is not really possible. Anybody want to comment on that? Thanks, Jeff.
And nobody is going to answer the question. Why haven't you addressed the fact that you're just ignoring the statute? If you don't want to follow the statute, change it to something so that people will know what's predictable. These guys have been in charge in one form or another for years. Like, they're the ones that are responsible for it not happening. Jeff Landfield's asking a great question. Why haven't you fixed it? Why haven't you addressed some sort of a long-term fiscal plan that solves some of these problems? The PFD one, to be specific. It is because they do not want to solve it. They don't want to. They hold themselves higher than you, and they know better. They're so smug.
Eric Stone with Alaska Public Media again. I wanted to ask about the elections bill, Senate Bill 64. I see it has not been transmitted to the governor yet. I'm curious. I mean, time seems to be of the essence with this bill. I'm curious why it hasn't been transmitted yet and when to expect that.
Oh, thanks, Will. Senator Wilkowski.
Thank you. My estimation is it'll be in the next few days. We just wanted to time it in a way so that if we did need to get back together as a legislature, we would be here. And we had the Easter break, and then you have the supplemental on the floor this week. So we just wanted to have timing. And then we're also still having discussions with people to ensure that we can get this all the way across the finish line.
So
Mari Kanegi with
what
Anchorage
he
Daily
means is he suspects that the governor is going to veto the bill, and they're looking for some leverage to get the governor to sign it, or just a agreement, maybe even a gentleman's agreement, but I don't think that that's possible. But it is an agreement or a negotiation of I get my bill, you get your bill, right? So what he's saying is he thinks that the governor is going to veto the bill, and he doesn't want that to happen. So how do we either sweeten the deal so the governor doesn't veto the bill, or round up our votes to be able to override the veto? He needs time to do that. That's why it hasn't been transmitted.
News. I have a question for Senator Tobin on the education bill. You mentioned that the task force is meeting Friday about local contributions. I'm wondering about a CS for that, for Senate Bill 277. Is that something that you're expecting to have ready Friday as well, or can you share more about the timeline for that?
Senator Tobin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks, Mari. That's a great question. We are going to work as fast as our legislative legal drafters can work. Unfortunately, the drafter who works on education also works on the budget. And so there's often a dynamic of where we might not be first top priority with other conversations that are happening in this legislature at this point in time. I also want to note, just because I have an opportunity here, is next Wednesday, the Task Force on Education Funding will be going over accountability and assessments. And I am especially excited because we'll have an opportunity for lawmakers to take a mock AK STAR assessment. We'll be able to show the public what it looks like to take these very well structured evaluations of student proficiency. I am looking forward to it. I hope we have lots of participation, and I invite everyone to come and learn a little bit more about state assessments.
Are our scores protected?
You get immediate results.
Oh, okay.
You get to choose whether you share them.
Why would legislators waste their time doing something like this? That's just a dog and pony show.
Independent. Question probably for Senator Giesel or Senator Stedman. I saw that HB 78 is in Senate Finance tomorrow, and so I wanted to ask, what is the current status of public employee pensions?
This is a return to defined benefits bill
that's ready to move, get through both chambers, and get signed. Where are things right now?
Who would care to take that? Or maybe I'll just go ahead.
Well, the bill is in Senate Finance.
Yes.
It's already passed the House. And so after it comes out of Senate Finance, it'll go to the Senate floor. So that's the status.
Thank you. Any comments?
Awkward. Senator Stedman does not like the bill, and the rest of the majority on the Senate wants to see the bill passed.
We have lots of time to the end of the session. So we're just going through the process.
What are the amendments and concerns at this point still to be addressed?
I haven't looked at the amendments, so I couldn't tell you what my committee, other committee members' concerns are. I've got several concerns with the bill, of course, but we'll deal with them tomorrow at the finance table.
So, Mark, this is certainly
I'm not going to answer your
an
questions.
issue that is very important to our caucus, the Senate Majority Caucus. We're trying to find a way to resolve it, but we have to keep our eyes wide open and figure out what it's going to cost us, and deal with all of the issues out there. We can't put the state into debt. We know that, but we also know that a retirement system is long overdue in this state. But what it's going to actually look like, we're not quite there yet.
You have a retirement system in this state. You're making it sound like we don't have a retirement system, and now we need to put one in place because we don't have one. You've got one. If you need to sweeten it, if you need to improve it, then improve it. But you don't need to go back to a system that has put us $7 billion in debt.
Jeff Landfield for Senator Tobin. I'm sure you saw that the education levy in Anchorage is barely failing by a few hundred votes, but it's basically 50-50 out of, many 40,000 plus votes. What message do you think that sends? The biggest city in Anchorage is divided on this special education levy.
Senator Tobin.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks, Jeff. It's hard to guess or surmise what thousands of voters are thinking when they cast a vote for or against something like their schools. We know overwhelmingly Anchorage residents love their public education system, participate in it, want it to be safe, and value its contributions. However, I also know that costs are extremely high in Anchorage. I was there this weekend, and at $5 a gallon, it's hard to ask people to keep giving a little bit more and a little bit more. I think there's a real conversation to continue to be had about education funding and who ultimately bears a responsibility to make sure that our kids are adequately educated.
So this morning I took a look at what happened in Anchorage, and numbers could have come in today that I haven't seen. The bond package that they are referring to, that the question was about 123 votes shy of being passed. Okay. So the voters said no to going into debt for capital improvements for the school system. There were so a total of 8, there were 7 other bond packages that the voters all said yes to. Now, that was as of this morning's vote count, which was, I think, actually last night's vote count. So that could change, I guess. And the outcomes, especially for the one that's 123 votes, could change, I guess, if you have to give a number of days, 10 days or so for absentee ballots to come in. Okay. What's interesting is they said no to additional taxation. Was also a question about sales tax. They said no to that. So literally the voters in Anchorage have said 7 out of 8 bonds go into debt. Yes. just not for education. We're split on that. And don't tax us now. So take care of us. We want our government. We don't want to pay for it. Go into debt and have the future Alaskans pay for it. That's what they've said. I mean, if this isn't predictable based on what's happening in the legislature and what's happening at the federal government, like, I don't know what else to say. Like, we are our own worst enemy financially in the state of Alaska and in this country. We are addicted to easy money and debt. And Anchorage is no different.
Thank you, Senator. Well,
I guess there's one other thing I should add about that. If you keep voting Democrat, and the Alaska Democrats want to eliminate oil and gas development, which is basically our economy, if they want to eliminate that, then what is that saying about they care about the state of Alaska's economy? They don't care about it. So why we have challenges right now with regard to high prices and jobs are hard to come by, high paying jobs are hard to come by, it's because we haven't made the right decisions collectively to prioritize private sector economic growth. We got lots of federal dollars flowing in. So if you're a government worker or you're tied to government work, you got money. It's the rest of us in the private sector that don't, that are struggling. All right. Let's see if we got any more questions.
Courtney, Alaska's news source. Senator Giesel, again on the gas line. You mentioned today that the joint resolution is going to be passing out of the Senate Resources Committee. What are your thoughts on that joint resolution, and is it going to be amended?
Well, it was a committee substitute was offered last week. Today's Wednesday, right? Yes, last week. I've received no additional amendments, so that will be the version that we pass out, I assume. It will be before the committee to determine if it passes out or not.
Got time for one more.
Okay.
With all the talk, Eric Stone with Alaska Public Media, with all the talk of the large PFD in the House, I'm curious if there's any update on what a reasonable PFD is to expect, to be expected this year, if any of that might wind up as an energy relief payment. Senator Stedman talked a little bit about fuel triggers for schools, but I'm curious, if there's any update on what the dividend might be.
We assumed right at the beginning it'd be around $1,000, maybe a little bit more. Senator Stedman, any further observations you care to make?
I think that's pretty close, around $1,000 I'd expect, because there's a heavy concentration on deferred maintenance. And you'll see that with the capital budget rollout. We have schools that are falling apart, literally falling apart. And you have to ask yourself, do you want a school for the kids to go to, or do you want to hand them large dividend checks?
Why is it the dividend's fault that you don't have capital spending? Why isn't it the operating budget's fault that you don't have capital spending? Why the dividend? I mean, that's the easy money, I guess, and we're just addicted to easy money. So we don't want to have a question about unfunded, unfilled vacancies. How many of those are we funding? I mean, I bet you there's 10 to 100 or more $1 million in unfilled vacancies that are being money's going to be appropriated for. How much money are we going to spend on education? Probably tens of millions. It's not going to be hundreds of millions, tens of millions. I mean, you can find that in your unfilled vacancies. So it's the operating budget that should be viewed as competing with your capital budget. Not the dividend. The dividend's a resource benefit from the owners of the resource, the people of Alaska. So you're going to take that, you're going to keep taking that and say that's the reason we don't have school maintenance, is because you keep taking a dividend for your resource wealth. It's not the fact that we're spending all the rest of the money on our operating budget and our salaries and our lifestyles for state workers. That's the handouts. The source of power and maintaining power in state government, right? The operating budget, that can't be the reason we don't have capital budget spend. It's because of this dividend. It's crazy talk.
And that is definitely in front of us. So if we increase the dividend substantially, or any other expenditures relative to deferred maintenance, the deferred maintenance will have to decrease because we have bookends on the budget that we have to meet. There's only so much money to go around. And in the event next winter that oil prices far exceed our expectations, we could come back and readdress that. But you don't want to do that. And
you could come back and readdress a dividend if you, did I understand that correctly? Well, I was tinkering with my stuff here. Address the dividend if we have more money. Gary, yeah. So that was my point. The operating budget is why we don't have deferred maintenance. This is the problem that all municipalities and governments have, right? There's always this tug of war between operations spending and capital spending, between operations, daily things, paychecks and paper and heating oil and all of that, and money to be spent on deferred maintenance, on maintenance that shouldn't have been deferred in the first place, right? You only defer it because you've made decisions with your money on your operating budget that there's not enough to do the maintenance. So you put it into the deferred maintenance category. This is evidence of poor management over decades, right? That's why we have a deferred maintenance bubble that needs to be addressed, because we've been spending the money instead of taking care of what we have. We've been spending it on an operating budget. The private sector and the resource owners in this state want and expect a dividend from their resources. And that money gets spent in the private sector. These people here only care about the public sector. That's all they care about. They care about the people of Alaska who are tied to government spending. That's who they care about. Those of us that choose to live as free of government as possible, we will pay our taxes and we will acknowledge that we need government for the things that we need. Road, police, schools, all that, right? We'll pay for that. We don't want to pay for the excess. And there's excess there. I've told you before, I brought up to my own leadership while I was there, there's $300 million in positions that are unfilled that fiscal year that we appropriated money towards. $300 million to positions that did not have people in them. Some of those positions would have people in them later in the year, but there are positions that had been vacant for years. The oldest one that had not had a job in it was a Department of Fish and Game position that hadn't had somebody in it for 10 years. And yet it had been funded every single year for the last 10 years. And that money's spent. It isn't roll over into the next fiscal year. It's gone. They spend it on things. The legislature doesn't know what they spend it on. Probably gets spent on overtime. Folks love to get overtime. Why do you like overtime? Well, overtime goes into your pension, your retirement. So the more overtime you can get equals more retirement that you can get. Anyway, it's kind of depressing to watch this.
And a prayer that everything comes together next winter or a year from now. That's no way to run a state.
Thank you, Senator Giesel.
Well, I think the question begs to be asked as well, what are we doing about new revenue? Nobody asked about that. There's several proposals on the table. The internet sales tax, which I think has a different name, but that's what I call it just because I don't know the complexity of that bill. But the other one is the S corporation tax, which does not tax Alaskans. It taxes companies that are based outside the state for the most part, that don't pay a corporate tax right now.
Who employ Alaskans.
We have budget needs, as Senator Stedman has outlined and Senator Tobin, but there's more than that. There's infant learning, which is a preventative program for kids that need extra help from 0 to 3 years old. We struggle to fund that. Behavioral health grants to the nonprofits that provide behavioral health services have been reduced down. They've been reduced from 100% down to 25% now. We have child advocacy centers where children that have been physically abused can be properly cared for with trauma-informed care. We struggle to meet the needs of those organizations as well. So the fact is, people want a dividend. $1,000 is what we've been able to afford in the past, but it still isn't enough. Our costs go up too. The needs go up too. And so at some point, Alaskans have supported the two new revenue measures that I've mentioned, the internet sales tax, which again taxes companies outside the state, and the S corporation tax, which was actually expanded and is part of a bill that the Senate Finance Committee has right now.
It's a bold claim.
I also proposed in that bill, I think it's 227, an education payroll tax, very small amount, $100 per paycheck that people, one paycheck out of the year, $100 deducted going into an education fund. Senator Hoffman has proposed actually constitutionalizing an education fund in the Constitution that could have money set aside from perhaps an education payroll tax that would help fund some of the education needs. I mean, there's a lot of ideas that we put forward. The problem is we got 60 people we have to convince, right? Or at least 21, 11, and that final single person on the third floor. So there are answers to these issues. We just have to have the courage to go forward with them.
We spend a lot of time talking about the dividend. I know it's really important to some people. Everyone is important, but particularly there are some people that need it more than others. But, I really respect what I heard from the board, from the Permanent Fund Board. I met with them a couple of weeks ago, and they said, think of the dividend as not just the check you get once a year. The dividend that we get in Alaska is for the services that are paid for from the money we take from the permanent fund. And so if we didn't have that extra dividend paying for services, we'd have to be facing an income tax or a sales tax or something. Otherwise, we couldn't fund the services we have. So,
what? You all probably got that and understood what he said. I'm going to have to back it up because I don't know what the heck he just said. Permanent Fund Corporation says that the permanent fund dividend is for services the government paid for.
People that need it more than others. But, I really respect what I heard from the board, from the Permanent Fund Board. I met with them a couple of weeks ago, and they said, think of the dividend as not just the check you get once a year. The dividend that we get in Alaska is for the services that are paid for from the money we take from the permanent fund. And so
services we pay for from the money we take from the permanent fund. I'd like to see if I could get that in writing. I wonder if we could get the Permanent Fund Corporation board to put that in writing. I just bet you that Senator Stevens, he's ad-libbing here. He's off the cuff. I bet he wasn't supposed to say that. I bet it was a conversation happening behind closed doors, because I don't think you could get that in writing from the Permanent Fund Corporation. Imagine the Permanent Fund Corporation is supposed to follow statute, and the statute says there's supposed to be a dividend paid. The dividend is the dividend for an investment. It would be no different than you going out and buying stock in the stock market, and that company pays dividends to you, the stock owner, the owner of the resource. You gave them your money, you bought the stock, and now they're going to pay you dividends. We Alaskans, through this socialist document that we have, are collective owners of our natural resources. And the legislature created this program whereby the investments made from a quarter of the royalties put into the permanent fund, the dividend is paid off that investment earnings to the owners of the resource. This, if the permanent fund corporation thinks it's something other than that, then they're not following the law. Whatever closed door conversation this was probably over a beer or something, because it doesn't have anything to do with truth. Like, it's a statutory program. It is no different statutorily than the base student allocation is that divvies up state money, divvies up general funds to pay for education. The statute that pays out a dividend is the policy that takes permanent fund earnings and pays a dividend to people, to the resource owner. It has nothing to do with whatever. I don't even know how to say that again. Senator Stevens. All I would say, Senator Stevens, you need to get that in writing from the Permanent Fund Corporation. See if the board can give that in writing. Yeah. Can we get one of those press people there to write about it and go contact the Permanent Fund Corporation? Can I get that in writing? Yeah, that's the quiet part was said out loud. That's exactly right, Gary. That was a conversation that somebody in the background, they're like, oh man, Stevens, why did you say that? Somebody get that man to retire. Yeah, that's right. He's going to retire. This is his last hurrah. Hey, there you go, Gary. That's exactly right. The dividend is the people's share of the resources taken from the state. To be perfectly honest, I don't appreciate. I mean, I like the dividend. Like Senator Stevens said, 3,000, 1,000. Who's going to say no to that, right? The point that I come to is, I would rather have a non-socialist constitution and policy in the state because it would be healthier for the state. The incentive for people to come to Alaska and buy land and then develop that land because they own what's on it and under it would be an advantage to the private sector. What we have now is, if you want to take advantage of the natural resources, you got to go through the socialist state. And that's a nightmare. Only the wealthy get to do that, because it takes a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of lawyers to figure that out and work through the process. Only the rich get to do that. If you were the owner of the land and owner of the resources on the land, then you could benefit from it. Just like they do down in the lower 48. A rancher who owns the land in Texas or Oklahoma puts up an oil well and they get a royalty off of it. Now, things might be different in Alaska because we're so much larger. Who's gonna buy land on the North Slope, right? I understand. Maybe this is the best that we can do. and honestly, speculation about something other than the socialist constitution that we have is irrelevant, because we're not going to do something different, right? That's not going to change or go away. So it is what it is. So in this sense, the best thing that we can do with this socialist policy, this socialist concept of collective ownership of our natural resources, is to ensure that the private citizen benefits. And it is not just government that benefits, and therefore private citizens benefit through the doling out of services and money through the bureaucrats and through the elected leaders, through the government. Okay. The best case that we can do here from a capitalist or free market perspective, working in this socialist construct, is to ensure that the permanent fund earnings are earmarked for the private sector. If they don't, if you give this up, then you're going to express your socialist ownership only through government services. You're literally going to have to go to your elected leader to have some benefit, or have some grant or some service, right? Every other state's got roads and schools and police and airports and all of that, right? All of that is in other states as well. We should all be willing to support that type of infrastructure and those needs through any sort of taxes that we put down, because those are services we agree to. Just like everybody else in the nation has to do. But here we are in Alaska. We're about to give up our dividend. These people are just seething that they have to pay $1,000 dividend. They would much rather that $1,000 go to government and they divvy it out through the budget process, the appropriations process. Deshana says, how to say that again is that Stevens is saying that we are using the PFD for services, meaning we need it to pay for other stuff. Yeah, I don't know. I think what he's saying is the permanent fund corporation says we are getting a dividend from money that should be used to pay for government services. If we're saying the same thing, that's fine. Anyway, I think it was he's trying to make a point off the cuff, and I know how hard it is sometimes to ad lib and make a point off the cuff. So I'm going to give him a little bit of grace and benefit of the doubt here, because he may not be getting the conversation completely right, but that doesn't make any sense. And if you could get it in writing, then from the Permanent Fund Corporation board of directors, then I'd like to see that. Craig, they are being honest when they say that the money is all that they can afford. That's it, because if they didn't pay the dividend, then people would be upset and they wouldn't get reelected. There's enough people out there that are still upset about not getting a dividend. That's what they as soon as they can afford to not do it, then they won't. You and I have got to keep up the pressure. Yeah, Christopher, don't we all? Christopher says they want him to pay. He wants them to pay the PFD per the law that is written. Exactly. But the problem is, as soon as you do that, they have to make a decision as to whether they reduce spending in your operating capital budget or raise taxes somewhere else, because you cannot do it all. You cannot spend all that you want to spend and pay a dividend per the statute. You can't do it all. You don't have enough money. So you have to make a decision. You have to put some kind of strategy in place for the long term that says, here's where our priorities are. Follow the law or change the law. Any of your gubernatorial candidates that say anything different are lying to you, or they're just ignorant. They don't know. You got to have members of the legislature. You got to have Republicans that are willing to cut spending. You don't have that right now. You don't have it. Well, that's an option. A sales tax is an option. An income tax is an option. It'd have to be broad-based. It's this idea that Giesel's got of tapping into the onesies and twosies is what I like to call them, but they're the small taxes that are anywhere from tens of millions to 100 million or 200, 300 million. That doesn't solve the problem. Like, it's more revenue, yes, but it doesn't solve the problem. You need $800 to $900 million for maybe a $700 million for a $1,000 dividend. I forget right off the top of my head. Point is, you need a significant restructuring of our government that includes some sort of revenue measure and some sort of reduction if you're going to get a steady statutory dividend. That is the structural change that has to happen. And if you are not willing to either cut spending or raise revenue or do both, then you can kiss your dividend goodbye, because the government's going to continue to grow. That is the honest truth. I cannot get any more plain with you. Like, that is the levers that you have to agree to. Reduce spending, raise revenue, one of the two or both. Okay. I don't know how we got off on that. This is supposed to be their press conference, right? Is there anything left here?
Have that extra dividend paying for services, we'd have to be facing an income tax or a sales tax or something. Otherwise, we couldn't fund the services we have. So please think about that dividend as more than just a check. I think Alaskans need to understand that. All right. I think.
Ooh, Giesel wants to jump in there. What is
we're all done. Thank you so much. See you next week.
Yeah. Okay, good. We don't want to hear her anyway. Okay. So Stevens came to a similar conclusion, but it's not the same conclusion, right? He said, if you want a dividend, you want a statutory dividend, then you're going to have to raise revenue somewhere else because we need our services. Okay. Meaning he's already in his mind ruled out, you cannot cut the budget. You can't reduce spending. Where we're at now and the lifestyle we have, we are living in a 5 or 6 bedroom house, and we only have the revenue to really afford a 3 or 4 bedroom house. But we want the 5 or 6 bedroom house with a pool out back. So we're not going to move. So we need to raise revenue, or you need to give up your dividend. One of the two. That's what we got to do. And there's enough people out there that are having to tighten their belts, and they don't have good paying jobs, and they're not sitting in a position in life like this man is, who are saying, wait a second, if I have to do with less, why doesn't government have to do with less? But that's not the thinking that's going on with the leaders of the Senate. No. And the underlying thing here, the engine that gets them to that position is because when they have the money to hand out, they get to make the spending decisions. They get to stay in power because they are answering the mail to the lobbyist and the government sector and the voters that want that money. So they stay in power by being able to do that. There's literally, if you're going to reduce spending and cut programs and reduce the scope and what government does, then you're reducing the number of voters that are going to reelect you and put you in, right? That's why it's so doggone difficult. If you're going to, you don't even have Republicans. You don't even have a majority of Republicans that are going to do that. Yeah, more than just a check. No, really, it is just a check. It is a check. It is a investment earnings check. That's what it is. Anyway, that's what I got for you tonight, guys. I think this press conference is really key, and it telegraphs to me that the legislature, or at least the Senate, is going to slow roll this conversation about a gasline project support. They're going to take all their time that they can, and they're going to compress it down into the very end of the legislative session and say, give us your information. They think they're going to be able to use that time compression as a weapon against Glenfarne to say, give us your private information. That's really what they want. That's how they're protecting people, because they can't stand the fact that a private entity, a private corporation, would be making profit when they had it in mind that the state would be the owner of the project and the state would be the one making the profit. And now that's not the case. They can't stand that. So they want to see Glenfarne fail. Show us we're going to play hardball. You want to have your tax abatements and you want to have your volumetric tax. I think that's a great idea. You want to have your volumetric tax? I'll help you get it. You just have to show us your stuff. Show us your financials. Well, we can't show you financials because this is a private enterprise. Business doesn't work if I share my financials. It just makes the cost of the whole project go up. Oh, well, that's too bad. I guess we'll have to find a different way to get a pipeline. That's fine with her. She's got it in her head that she wants something else other than private enterprise running the show. If this project doesn't happen, it's going to get more and more clear that it is because of Senator Wielechowski and Senator Giesel. They're the ones that will cause this project to not go forward. I, for one, will be here to keep saying it. Anyway. All right, guys. Let's see, catch up here. They can't reduce spending. This government keeps growing and spending the middle class and lower class people's PFD. That is where they're going. That's exactly right. That is the fiscal plan we have in play. I would like the governor to do that. I think it's probably way past time for him to come out and use the bully pulpit and be vocal every day until we get an agreement through the Senate. It needs to be a fight. It needs to be a knockdown, drag out, brawl in the street, get people's attention. You're about to lose a pipeline because these couple senators think they know best. The pressure has got to be applied to them. All right, folks. Since today's Wednesday, tomorrow's Thursday, I have obligations Thursday night, and I will not be doing this show. So don't expect me to be coming online at 7 p.m. But we'll be back Friday at 7 p.m. to catch up from Thursday's shenanigans in the legislature, and we'll leave it at that. I want to throw a tidbit out here for those that are still listening here. I participated I watched a local school board meeting, and I learned a lot. I've never been on my local school board. I don't have that personal experience like I do in the legislature, but some of it's kind of transferable, but not all of it. Like, they do things a little differently. Here's the crux of the problem. I don't think most people, well, I know most people weren't listening to the meeting. I don't think most people know what's going on in our school board in the decisions that they're making. Just like they don't know what's going on in the legislature. So, curious, do you want to hear and to witness, because these other municipality meetings are recorded. Do you want to go through a meeting that happens in the Fairbanks Borough or Fairbanks School Board or something else? Do you want to highlight that for people? I mean, I'm willing to pull up those recordings and we step through them and ask questions and apply logic and maybe get the word out about what's actually happening. If that's something that you would like to see, and you have a particular meeting in mind that you would like to have on the show, then I think that's something that I would like to explore. Yes, there's lots to look at in the legislature, but there's a lot at the local level that needs to be explained and highlighted as well. So if you have a candidate for a meeting, drop me a line, put it in the social media post, or send me an email. It's probably an easier way to do it is to communicate with me at producer@oversightlive.com, and we can make some arrangements and I may be able, well, I know that I can invite people on. If you've got the subject matter expertise in those areas, we can co-host a show. We can have you on as a guest host and we can step through the meeting and share our thoughts with people on it. And this is a way to provide oversight of more than just the legislature, but the local level as well. So if that's something that's interesting to you, then come up on the net and let me know. Lynn's got it right. So many meetings, so little time. Yeah. You watch the school board meetings and assembly, and I'm on the planning commission. It takes a certain political nerdiness. Yeah, right. But we got to figure some way to get the message out. Watching the meetings and then creating short clips of the meetings and then broadcasting them on social media is a way to raise people's awareness. Okay. So we can do that with the legislature because that's what I'm focused on, but maybe we could do this with other meetings too. I think there's some value there. And if you've got the subject matter expertise, then let's make a deal. Anyway, Gary says, let's explore that. I think it'd be a great idea, Gary. Yeah, you're paying attention, Craig. I will be there tomorrow morning with Michael Dukes on his show, bright and early, 7 o'clock in the morning. And I don't know what we're going to talk about yet, but we'll figure something out. I'm sure he's got an idea. Yeah. All right. Have a good night, all. We'll see you Friday night or tomorrow morning if you're watching Dukes. Have a good night.